Go. All right. So per usual, per our bylaws, we go through the ground rules at the beginning of all of our meetings. So I'll just read through these briefly here for you all. Steering committee members, proxies, and meeting participants are agreed to follow the following ground rules. They'll be reviewed at the start of every meeting, and all attendees are expected to follow them at all times. Participants who repeatedly violate the ground rules will be asked to leave. Only one person will speak at a time. We strive to listen well and be open-minded and maintain a positive outlook. Be ready to engage in respectful, constructive dialogue. No personal attacks or blaming others for actions or outcomes. Try to stay on track and avoid digression and grandstanding. No side conversations. Make sure you're giving your full attention to our speakers so we can be respectful of time. And then start and end on time to be respectful of everyone's time. I feel like I just said time like 5 times in a row. So like I said, tonight's agenda is pretty quick, or pretty cut and dry. Not quick, just only a few items on it. So we're gonna have a presentation on the 2025 operations of Outlet Dam at Priest Lake. And then we'll go into some matrix work and collaborative discussion with the PRWG board itself. And then we've got just a few things to cover in housekeeping, so I'm gonna try to keep us on task so we can get to those at the end. So about an hour for each. If you're doing the math there on the agenda, we'll spend about an hour each on them, but if we're having a discussion, I'm not tied to keeping us on this militantly, so, but we do wanna make sure we get through all the items. Okay, so I'd love to introduce Michelle and Bill. They've already introduced themselves, but let me go ahead and get your presentation pulled up. Okay, take it away.
Okay, let's see. Make sure it's turned on, right? There's the volume choice.
There's a volume, and maybe test in your...
Testing.
You may want to bring the mic up a little bit.
Bring it up. Is that better?
Sounds like it's working.
It's all the way up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and Bill and I we're planning not to stay through the whole thing, so
Okay.
if there's questions and time, I guess we would take them.
Excellent. We can do them when you're done, and we can go through some questions, and then if folks want to leave after that, we can just go into our PRWG session. So, okay.
All right, so thank you to Aaron and to the Priest River Watershed Group for allowing us to come here and report and reflect on the Priest River and Lake operations for 2025. This is Bill. He introduced himself. He joined IDWR in the summer, and he's our safety of dams engineer for the region in Coeur d'Alene. And so we're both going to present today. And before jumping into the discussion, I wanted to ask you, how many of you remember a time before cell phones? I remember personally that I resisted them for the longest time and would admit now that they are useful, even though they're a headache at the same time. But I do think there's a parallel in that we're trying to make some changes that are what are seen as an improvement to the system, the Priest Lake and Priest River system. And we're definitely deviating from how it's always been done. So, but hopefully for positive change. Next. So the purpose of our talk will be to discuss how we incorporated best practices into the 2025 operations. And I'll start with the operations during the recreation season. And then Bill will jump in and talk about the fall drawdown and specifically discuss the capped flow during the fall drawdown that we tried for the first time this year. And then I'll jump in and talk about stakeholder feedback, and we'll also talk about monitoring that we are starting to do on the system, and then follow up with next steps. So we can't talk about the lake operations without mentioning statute. So we have Idaho Code 70-507. And in dry years, it says we can hold or must hold the lake between 3 and 3.5 feet of lake level. That's during the recreation season. The recreation season is interpreted to mean starting Memorial Day. So by Memorial Day, we had the lake up to 3.0 feet. And we were ready to go for the recreation season. You would notice if you looked at statute that nowhere is there mention of the Priest River in that statute. It's all lake focused. The guidance on Priest River is other forms. It comes from the Priest River Basin Plan and other documents, but not statute. So in the 2025 recreation season, the lake peaked at 3.8 feet on May 31st, and we stabilized it below 3.5 feet by June 15th. The red bands show the 3.5 foot level and the 3 foot level for the lake. So by August 4th, we had the lake down to 3.35 feet. That was a significant date because from that point on, we allowed the lake to drop gradually to the 3 foot level, and it reached 3 feet by October 1st. So that aligned with our plan, and that's what happened on the lake side. Next. So then looking at the river, between May 30th and July 31st, the natural inflow dropped from 3,800 CFS to 300 CFS. So it was about a tenth of what it started out as, and that's normal. That happens every year. And during that time, we are matching the inflow with our outflow. So we're bringing the gates down to that 300 CFS as the runoff diminishes. For the months of August and September, we then switched modes and focused on the Priest River flow and aimed for a minimum of 200 CFS. So that's this point right here is August and September. So while we were holding the river at 200 CFS, as I had mentioned before, the lake was allowed to drop just from declining inflow and from evaporation. So in past years, we would have maintained a constant lake level at the expense of the river flow. We just would have kept dropping the river flow to keep that lake constant. So by September 30th, we did have that lake down to 3 feet, and the flow had maintained the 200 CFS for all of summer. And it was even more than 200 CFS at times. So it is worth mentioning, we had 2 pretty decent rains, and one of those was the end of July and one was mid-August. Those are represented by the blue dots on the hydrograph. And all in all, the recreation season did go as planned, and we received some positive stakeholder feedback from the city of Priest River and from anglers and residents on the Priest River, saying that they valued the higher flow in the river. We do have this question that remains: how did it impact the fish? How did that extra flow in the Priest River impact them positively or negatively? Do we have any data that's going to guide us one way or the other? We've gotten anecdotal data from people that fished that the conditions were good. So in evaluating this year's operations during the recreation season, they did successfully maintain that flow in Priest River, which is especially important in late summer when it's hard to keep flow in the river traditionally. And so this reduces the likelihood of didymo, also called rock snot, that develops in very low flows. And it's worth noting that this is the first time that we've been able to maintain that 200 CFS all summer. And it wouldn't have been achievable without the extra 6 inches of gate height on the dam that the board had installed by 2022. And the statute paired with that to allow us to keep the lake up higher. Another point is that the 200 CFS going through the dam brings us closer to meeting that minimum stream flow water rate, which specifies 300 CFS in summer months. So the Priest River, near Priest River gauge, this last summer recorded about 290 to 300 CFS with a low of 281 CFS. And if you compare that to past years, it would have been more like the 150 to 190 CFS range at that gauge. So within the entire system, there is give and take. And so on the lake, the consequence, I guess, the trade-off would have been that there was less beach surface area and erosion on the beaches due to the higher lake level early in summer. With that, I will turn it over to Bill.
I'm gonna try to do it
You want
without the mic.
Yeah.
So if I don't speak loud enough, feel free to ask me to speak up. So fall drawdown, for most of you that have lived in this area a while know that happens in the month of October. We start where we left off in the summer recreation season, so we start at 3 feet and we drop down from 10:1 through 10:31. The only legal guidance we have that limits us is that we try to, per Idaho Code 7507, we have a 0.1 minimum elevation of lake level. And we also try to be done by November 1st, for the reason mentioned up there, the kokanee reds, kind of the spawning kokanees on the shores of the lake. Next slide. So historically, if you look at the picture there, we just lifted all the gates up, literally. And if you'll go back one slide. Now, if you look at the gate arrangement there in that picture, you can see that we're checking the water, and we're checking the water at through different gates at different elevations. So forward water. And one more. And then so that historic practice, what you're looking at there is last year. So last year it resulted in, you can see we incrementally increased. We're trying not to make huge changes in the flow or huge changes in the pool elevation. So we incrementally increased that, and then last year you saw it was, got to over 2,600 CFS, and we let the lake drain down to the desired elevation. Next slide. So what did we do different this year? One of the biggest thing is we did a capped flow. So our original target was 1,000 CFS, and what that meant though, and let me back up and say, we got to that 1,000 CFS per the Priest River Basin plan. And that was guidance, I think, from Fish and Game that was in that plan. But what it meant to us if we capped the flow at 1,000 CFS is that we estimated we would only get down to a foot, the winter pool would only be down to a foot. And so, we go to the next slide, please. And so we got some stakeholder feedback, and we did more estimating and thinking about it. And between feedback from, like I'll mention one of the companies was Copper Bay Construction. They said it make it more difficult for us if we have to work through fall and winter in a foot of water versus what they were used to at the lower level. But also what we found out is that, okay, that's also gonna put us at risk of, a dam safety risk. So if there's floating debris out in the middle of the lake, that's bad for boating, right? But if you go to the next slide, we also have evidence of, debris flowing down the outlet channel, and it's hitting the gates, and you can see the dents there. So what that meant is, we adjusted our target instead of, we knew we had to be below 1 foot, so we adjusted our target, and that means, next slide please, is that we capped the flow at 1,500 CFS. And our estimate was that that would bring us down to 0.4 as far as the lake level elevation. You see on the screen there is that the gray there is last year, and then you can see down below the dark blue, that is our actual performance this year. You can see how we're trying to make small changes to the flow, and therefore small changes to the lake elevation. And then it may not look like a straight line, but that's as good as you get with an analog dam that's going to open in this date and that date. But that's a flat line up there at 1,500 CFS. And then we reported that or shared that with the public with a revised announcement back in September. So next slide, please. This again is looking at that fall drawdown comparison and performance. So the gray is the previous year, 2024, and then the dark blue above that is this year. You can see where, when it looks like the needle's doing this, that's typically a rain event. And so you can see that on October 8th, we got to 2.59. Why did we list that date and that number? Is because we believe that we gave voters on Priest Lake an extra week with their boats in the water. So as one of the stakeholders, that we thought that was good for them. So we extended the recreation season on the lake a little bit. We did more gradual changes, and then again brought that target. When we brought the target to 1,500 CFS, we brought our lake target level down to 0.4. Next slide, please. So then let's talk about some of the benefits, benefits of doing this method of drawdown. So in the upper left area, you'll see that was our plan. That's the CFS that we were trying to get, and you can see that when we're ramping up and when we're ramping down, we're trying to do that gradual to the, more predictable lake level reduction. Like I said just a minute ago, we hopefully gave the boaters an extra week on the lake. What else we did is we gave almost 2 full weeks of high flow river recreation. So I think 1,500 CFS was a great improvement over what we were going to be able to do with the previous plan. And then, as I mentioned before, with the dam safety, we addressed that. We also provided a more natural, again, within the limitations of we're operating a mechanical dam and we're operating each gate one by one. We did our best to make a more natural drawdown to better mimic the natural flow, and then less extreme flow rate in Priest River. So we're doing that because we're trying to preserve fish habitat, and then we got done by November 1st, and the reason why we did that is again for the spawning kokanee along the lake shores. So is that? So best practices from all this, the best practices, and the statute helps us do that best practice because that's the law. We're at 3 to 3.5 feet in dry. When it's a dry summer, we again have the 200 CFS river flows. We tried to limit. We tried to limit our changes to 20%. And why I just said that to Michelle is that we don't want people to get stuck on 20%. We're trying to make gradual changes that are as least noticeable as possible, both for river users and lake users. And this year, we did try to do 20%, but that might change it because we're constantly learning and constantly adapting. And then we got the drawdown done by the first, and then the winter lake level, we're keeping above 0.1. And then if you're paying attention to the monitors, to the USGS monitors, you'll know that. So our target was 0.4, we made it to 0.5. So we didn't make it all the way. That's because we had 2 significant rainstorms that limited our ability to get it all the way down there. I think that's my last slide, unless I missed anything. Yeah.
You're on slide 17 of 24.
We're good, we're good.
We're doing good.
So when it comes to stakeholder feedback, we really do thank you for your engagement always, but especially this summer as we're making these adjustments. And we are thinking of this as an evolving thing. So please keep your feedback coming. We just wanted to thank the entities that did call in and email, and that was Idaho Fish and Game and Copper Bay Construction, Elkins Resort Kayakers, Inland Northwest Fishing Guys, Lakes Commission, Priest River Watershed Group, and Selkirk Conservation Alliance, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and Idaho Department of Land. So thank you. As you can imagine, there were competing requests, competing interests. So it is a constant balancing act for us to hear your input and work with it and try to incorporate it and still follow statute and guidance. So that is what we're trying to do. Next. So while we didn't meet the 1,000 CFS cap that Bill mentioned, this is the first year of what we think of as an iterative process, and that will continue to incorporate new best practices as we learn and hear from you all and get data in. So maybe the 1,000 CFS could be phased in over time. Maybe repair practices by the dock repair company change, or infrastructure changes, or I don't know, maybe some changes are in the future regarding the infrastructure. So we are basically taking your input as we can, and we are also passing along your feedback to the Idaho Water Resources Board. I know that they would be interested in having a meeting with you in the future. And next. So then I'll talk a little bit about the monitoring efforts. Behind the scenes, every day and multiple times a day, we are looking at all the data available to us. We're looking at the weather, temperature, precipitation, wind. We're looking at USGS gauges, the one on the lake, and then the river flow gauge just downstream of the dam, and then the Priest River near Priest River flow gauge. We look at those continuously. And there is another thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to monitor inflow via the tributaries to Priest Lake. Next. And we're doing that in cooperation with DEQ and others. We have put a new staff gauge on Granite Creek, and we are also putting, we did put one on Upper Priest River, and we have plans to put a transducer on Hunt Creek. So those are some new things that we're trying to do. And then next. One thing that we have learned over the past few years is Priest Lake has different weather systems from the west side of the lake to the east side of the lake, and from the north to the south, it varies. And so we want gauges around the lake on different tributaries. We're focusing on the largest tributaries right now and wanting to put staff gauges on those. And we have in mind to put low-cost transducers and cellular telemetry, because real-time information is what we need. We need to know what's happening in those tributaries now so that we can be less reactive. Having real-time data will help us move more quickly and anticipate when we need to make changes, and that will translate to fewer fluctuations in the lake and fewer fluctuations in the river as we react. So having that real-time data would be valuable to us. So here are tributary measurements that we made on September 29th and 30th, and Granite Creek is the blue bar, and you can see that it's what the largest tributary to Priest Lake, has about 40% of the flow coming from that tributary. The others that we measured were Kalispell Creek, Hunt Creek, Lion Creek, and Lamb Creek, because it's right near the dam and handy for us. So going forward, for next steps, we'll continue to gather your feedback as stakeholders and incorporate those into our best practices as we're able to. We will take scientific information as that becomes available. As operations managers, we believe that, like I said, the process should be iterative as we go forward and make changes. And it's our understanding that the board, the Idaho Water Resources Board, intends to have a meeting with folks, stakeholders in spring or summer of 2026. So as we get more feedback, we'll incorporate that into 2026 operations. So that's, that wraps it up for what we wanted to say. And we can take questions if there's time for that.
There is definitely time. So just a reminder that at PRWG meetings, we try to reserve questions and comments for the steering committee first. And then if we've got time, we'll take some from the public. So I wanna, yeah, Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, so Michelle, one of the slides you had at the very beginning was, you kind of showed the spring runoff and the big,
The lake level,
well, you know, I think you showed the.
or was it the flow?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, that one. No, maybe
Okay.
it's that one.
Next,
Yeah, that one.
okay.
Anyway, it shows that the lake was very, very high. And then during that period of time, in that spring runoff, you're not holding back much of anything from the dam. Is that correct?
No, we are, well, in this phase, so if you go back one. Okay, so right here is where the lake peaked at that 3.8 feet. As soon as we know we've hit peak lake level and peak runoff, those coincide. As soon as we know we hit that, then we start, if you go to the next slide, we start bringing the gates down methodically to match what the inflow, what the calculated inflow is. So if the calculated inflow is 1,000, we're keeping the dam at 1,000. And in that way, keeping the lake pretty constant. It's coming down, but we're trying to roughly match that inflow.
And that peak that we saw there, that was in June, correct?
Which,
Go back to the next.
May 31st.
May 31st.
Yeah.
One quick question, could you explain the difference between a staff gauge and a pressure transducer in terms of flow termination?
Yeah, so we've got the There was a picture of a staff gauge, it's
I saw,
The stick.
the measurement that gives your water level.
okay,
And then we've got the ability, if you take a flow measurement across the channel, take a flow measurement and then relate that flow to the staff reading, you can get pairs of staff gauge readings and flow and make a rating curve.
Yeah.
So then, once you have that relationship, you can relate any staff gauge to the corresponding flow. And so if we have a transducer that measures staff readings and we have that equation, we can know what the flow would be.
and I'm guessing that there's no way for you to predict that you'll have this extra week for boaters. So most of us on the lake, we have to plan weeks ahead about getting our boats in and our docks taken in, if that's the case. I'm guessing that's something that you can't predict. Is that fair to say?
We can know how slowly the lake will drop, especially in the early part. We can kind of predict it. I think what it's gonna take for boaters to have confidence that they can wait another week is to go through this some summers and end of summer and try to really get it figured out.
Thank you.
And one more question. So what variables will impact the ability to use the 1,000 CFS rather than the 1,500 going forward? What would dictate the ability to use that 1,000 CFS?
If we can live with a 1 foot lake level due to the cap of 1,000 CFS, and Copper Bay Construction or other repair companies can work with a lake level of 1 foot, if they can do repairs on docks and we're not worried about infrastructure deteriorating and floating down the lake and into the outlet channel, we could go with 1,000. We just feel like it's a safety concern at this point.
Could you explain that? I just don't quite understand, like the docks get dislodged if there's water enough to the
Well,
lake?
so what Copper Bay explained to us is they don't have a way to clear the water out. Say there's a piling and they have some kind of infrastructure, something hardware they need to get to. They aren't able to do it underwater. So they're saying you need to get the lake down so that the part we need to fix is in air in winter so that we can fix.
And so then there's an issue of the docks breaking loose if they're not able to.
If they go into deterioration, they do detach and
So if it's not exposed and they can't fix it, it's at risk of breaking off, am I understanding that?
they'll just deteriorate if things are not being kept in repair.
Seems like we have the solutions.
Do you have some solutions? Maybe we need to talk.
They start to keep their infrastructure, keep to the fire.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was
It's that
saying.
simple.
Maybe we do have changes in the infrastructure that accommodate a higher winter lake level so that it's not an issue. But that could probably take some time to phase into that is what I'm thinking.
But if you had a higher lake winter level and you had a huge spring runoff and the dam couldn't keep up with it, then we're looking at a damaging spring with docks getting lifted up off the.
That is one concern.
Yeah, board docks will just disappear. The lake
Yeah.
level rises and the boards and nails scoot down and then you're gonna get a lot of stuff in the lake and downstream.
Every now and then we do have a high lake level a peak level of 5 or 6 feet. And some of the pilings don't accommodate that high of a lake level and docks have been known to go free. So.
I think I saw you raise your hand. You're good? No. Okay, Sean and then Eric.
So just for clarity, it sounds like what you're saying is if you kept the cap at 1,000, the lake would never get down below a foot. But if you run it at 1,500, you can get it down to 0.58 anyway. I guess it just seems weird to me that if you ran it at 1,000 CFS, I mean, at some point in the winter, wouldn't it get?
But we have to stop drawdown at November 1st, so we only have 30 days.
Is that by statute?
That is by the Priest River Basin Plan, saying we must finish, and it's per fishing game, that we must finish by November 1. For the reds on the shores of Priest Lake, so they don't get dehydrated.
And then Eve.
Complicated.
I was in a question for it. Are you gonna put a transducer on for Priest as well, or just that later?
We might, yeah, we haven't, sought money yet. So it's more of a justification with the board and getting that approved, but that would be a plan.
We'll plan to run one up there, so we should talk.
Oh, okay. The bummer about that site is it's out of cell reception, so it wouldn't be part of the cellular network.
I just had a comment. I would like to applaud Idaho Department of Water Resources for beginning to incorporate the health of Priest River into your management actions. For the entirety, as we all know, of the life of Outlet Dam, it's never been considered before, and it's just a revolutionary management shift that I think, and it sounds like it's a win-win for the river, for lake folks. I know we heard from a lot of lake people that appreciated the slow drawdown. And I just would like to thank you for listening to the community. And I would like to also know, did the Priest River Watershed Group have an influence on any of the management from this for this year?
We are always thinking about, what would this group think about this? What would this group think about this? And trying to find a happy medium.
Well, thank you for your adaptive management.
Any other questions from you? I think
Yeah, and I'd like to just second what Amy said in that, by that slower drawdown, and Bill mentioned this, boaters on the river did have an extra long season, and that was awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it worked out great for boaters.
I saw Hank and then we'll do John. Yeah.
So the November 1st deadline is to accommodate kokanee boats as per a fishing game on the lake.
Yeah.
But we're not at risk of drying them up if we're a foot over lake level, correct?
So here's the thing. And you have to correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. The kokanee, whatever the lake level is at,
Is where they're, yeah,
is where they're gonna spawn.
gotcha.
And then,
We
if you drop the lake after they spawn, around November 1st or around that date,
Right.
and you drop the lake after that
Yeah.
date, they will be high and dry.
Right. If it's at 3.5.
It doesn't matter what
That's
the
where they're
number
spawning,
is.
they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we need to have a conversation with kokanee.
Exactly.
John, yeah, go ahead.
So Bill, on that picture of the gates where the damage was, is that historical or is that from this year?
That was winter of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it just happened.
Jennifer, I think I saw.
Or, I'm sorry, wait, I thought you were asking about the dock that broke free. You're asking about
I'm
the,
asking about the dams on the gates.
oh, that's, overtime,
Overtime.
historic, yeah. Logs come down, old docks come down, all kinds of debris. Even the old historic dam, there's a timber that popped out of the bottom of the channel and flowed to the dam. That was a couple of years ago.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
Well, now I have a comment and a question. Oh, two questions. Have you ever thought about putting in like a barrier to hold the debris back so it doesn't damage the dam? And Genius.
I mean, there's problems with that too, because if that breaks, then you've got,
A lot,
yeah.
got it. And then I'm just curious at what, sorry, but I'm ignorant about the spawning cycle of the coconut, but when are they completed with spawning? Like, is there a point in the winter or
Yeah,
spring?
it's not a bad question. I was asking the same questions of Idaho Fish and Game. If the reds spawn around November 1st, they need to be kept wet until they hatch. So they incubate and hatch in spring. So
Okay.
from winter to spring, you have to not go below that level, whatever it is.
Got it.
Very good. And Betty, I'm seeing your hand back there. We'll try to exhaust these questions and then we'll go back to the public, okay? Yeah, but I see it. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to talk about high flows, and so I think about like the flows necessary to mobilize sediment and stuff. You guys, has Outlet Bay ever been dredged? Has there ever been a need for them? It just seems like you guys are wide open, but it really matters for sediment transport.
Yeah, I don't know if it being dredged.
It doesn't seem to be tracking much.
Anyone else from the steering committee? You can change your mind later if you want. Okay, Betty, go ahead.
Michelle and I have been talking for quite a while, and she said what she wanted was observational and anecdotal information from people that are on the river. So I'm just gonna share something with you. And by the way, yes, the river did not drop July 3rd like it has many, many years, 2.5 feet over the 4th of July weekend. It maintained from the beginning of July all the way up until about September 26th. So what I did on the 26th in anticipation of the dam being, of the dam adjusting for the fall flow was I took this and I stuck it in the bank of sand in front of my house. I put it in the ground 6 inches and I monitored how much the water rose between then and now. So on the 26th, it was here. On the 1st, it had gone 4 inches up. On again on the 4th, it went up an inch, and then between the 4th and the 6th, it went 9 inches overnight. And what I found when I went down to the river that morning was my first marker was in sand, about 1.5 inches deep. So 1.5 inches of sand came down the river overnight between the 6th and the 4th and the 6th, the 5th and the 6th. So the highest it got was on October 13th. And originally I was standing in the water next to this every time I took readings. And by October 13th, the water had risen this much. Now, when that happens, banks collapse repeatedly. And we have a railing at the river that when my husband put it in about 15 years ago, I could hold it. It was about waist high as I walked up this little incline. That railing is now, if I want to hold it and get out of the river, I would have to be about 2 feet tall. That's about how much sand has come down the river. I'm not saying that you can do anything about this. I just want people to know what these ups and downs on the river level do to the river. I know you're just following the law, but I still think the people that don't see the river and aren't on the river need to know how this human manipulation affects the river. And thank you, the 4th of July, I didn't see a big drop, but we did over Memorial Weekend. It went up 2.5 feet Thursday before Memorial Weekend, and it went down 2.5 feet by Sunday Memorial Weekend. It just causes an immense amount of erosion. And the reason the river was designated impaired in 1991 or 4 was for sediment and temperature. And I think one of the reasons we have so much sediment in the river is because of the fluctuations that the rise and drop that the dam causes. So I'm not here to be mad or angry. I'm just here to share information with you, so that you know that humans are causing so much degradation to the environment and the dam is a big contributor. I know you're doing the best you can, and thank you for the 20%, instead of going to a 20% reduction of time, it has made a good difference.
Thank you, Betty. Anyone else in our audience, public? Or did anyone else from the steering committee think of anything else?
Stan Miller, you had your hand up.
I was just gonna ask how long you think it takes to establish that reading curve reliably? I mean, you can't do it with 1 measure.
Yeah, I'd say you want 4 or 5 measurements, and probably in a season, if you can get the extremes, the high flow and the low flow.
Are you working with Todd on that?
Yeah.
I was out there with those transducers in.
Well, let's just say a big thank you to Michelle and Bill. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do you guys want to take a quick 5-minute break? We're actually on schedule. This is incredible. Like on the dot. So grab some snacks, some caffeine if you need it, and come back at just 5:30. You did a great job. Yes. Okay. I know you're a statue of it.